Okay, so we are live. Jasbina, I'm so excited to be interviewing you today. I met you at least a year ago, and I've known about you for over 7 years. You've been a top player in the love industry and in this whole community around helping people find love. So I've been inspired by what you do for a really long time. So thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Sarika. It's going to be fun.
I know, it's going to be fun. It's going to be like ladies talking about our favorite topic, love. So I'd love to introduce you. So Jasbina Ahluwalia adds a unique contribution to the matchmaking industry. She's pioneered an approach to matchmaking which blends East and West, which is fantastic. She's an attorney turned entrepreneur, relationship expert, and a matchmaker and a dating coach. She's the founder and president of Intersections Match by Jasbina, the only premier matchmaking and dating coaching firm for singles who are Indian in the US, Canada, and the UK. And Jasbina, just from the work I know, you also work with non-Indians too, right?
That's right. And many of our clients are very open to meeting non-Indians as well. So we're making cross matches, often.
Often.
Absolutely.
Okay. And this is really cool. You were a finalist in Oprah's search for a TV host, and you've been featured in the New York Times, the San Jose Mercury News, Chicago Tribune, and all of these other amazing publications. I mean, I've seen you in so many publications. You've participated in panels at HBS, Harvard Business School, Wharton, Northwestern, and Columbia. And what's amazing is that you have a background like most Indian women do. You were practicing law in San Francisco and Chicago, and you did your BA and MA in philosophy from Vanderbilt University, and your JD from the University of Michigan Law School. Wow, that's really, really quite a background. And it's amazing to see, kind of what you studied and then where you are today.
Yes, it's interesting because you don't connect the dots until later on, right? It's hard to connect the dots without hindsight. But with hindsight, I think what I'm doing is actually very related to my philosophy training. And so it's kind of interesting, right? The same things that got me super excited about philosophy I think are what really energizes me about what we're doing now. So it's kind of interesting.
I love that philosophy. Yeah. And I want to dig into that a little bit more because I'm a huge philosophy, kind of nut too in terms of this work that I do. So I get it. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. Like, how did you go from law to becoming a matchmaker? What inspired this journey for you?
Sure. Well, I think there are really three big reasons, right? 3 big reasons I had to really inspire me and do what I'm doing. One is I really wanted to create a venture of my own that had meaningful impact on people's lives, right? And I can't think of a higher stakes endeavor than who your life partner is going to be, right? So I thought, there's my impact. In terms of my culture and professional background, I really felt that was going to be additive to what I'm doing. Working with clients are very similar in a lot of ways to me, not only culturally, and also balancing, right, the West and the East. So, as you mentioned, we are working with clients in the US, Canada, and the UK, all in the Western world, right? And most of our clients do have, an Indian background, South Asian background. So whether they're interested in meeting Indians or non-Indians, they themselves tend to have that South Asian background. So, really understanding the nuances of that and how, great asset and how sometimes it can candidly be a bit of a liability too, depending on how we, what our perspective is on things. And then 3, I really knew for myself from a design your life point of view, kind of a, just really lifestyle design, like Tim Ferriss style. I really, for me, I knew that I wanted to have kids in the future. I just saw that for me, something I wanted to do. And the way I wanted to do that was, and I think this is a very personal decision. So I'm when I express this, I always do so with the energy of this is my decision. Everyone, every woman, and really every couple should make the decision that works for them. And there's not a one size fits all. But for me personally, what I wanted to do is be very, very hands-on in raising them. And I really didn't want to be kind of in an office all day, they being somewhere else. And then, that's not how I wanted to do it. So for me, it became very much of wanting that flexibility, that time in life flexibility as well. So
Totally. That's really
primary
inspiring.
drivers. Yeah.
And that's really what inspired me. I think I really resonate. It's like you want to do something meaningful in the world. You want to have flexibility. You want to own your time. And I agree with you. It's not for everyone, right? Not everyone is supposed to go down this path.
Sure.
But I think it's an empowered woman's perspective that you can have it all. Like if you really want to have a partner, if you really want to have a family and you want to have a career that you enjoy, you can have all of those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really think it's important for women to really take that in. I mean, there are some things that in terms of having it all, it's such an interesting discussion. And I think it's going to be more and more interesting as, we've got the presidential election in the US, where it is likely that there's going to be a woman running. And I think a lot of these ideas of can we have it all, there's been a lot of national dialogue about this. It's going to continue. I think it is possible. I think it's also important to know what's super important to you and where good enough is good enough. I think that's very important too, as you're figuring out. I will tell you, you mentioned that I've spoken at these different schools. And one thing, regardless of the topic, because the topic wasn't really love in these panels that I was speaking on, right? It was entrepreneurship. It was like business related. And yet these conferences, predominantly women were attending these conferences. So this work-life balance was a topic regardless of the formal official title of the panel, whether it was moderating, whether it was speaking on being a panelist. And so I think this is very much something that is on most women's minds, right? Whether they're a student, whether they're kind of in the trenches as a professional, running their own business, what have you. It almost doesn't matter.
Totally. When I went to Wharton, I actually did a panel on work-life balance.
Okay.
And I was also interested in that topic, and I never had a resolution. So I think this discussion is really, really helpful. And from my own experience, having your life partner there with you as you're trying to have it all, it's really great, right? Because you can share responsibilities with someone, you have someone who supports you and your dreams. So having that aspiration of, I can find a life partner and I can create a life that is balanced and meaningful and fun, has time for my kids. I mean, all of this is possible.
Absolutely. But exactly like you said, and I think Sheryl Sandberg has too, right? Your selection of a partner is such a critical piece in this, right? So absolutely.
And let's talk about that. Why is finding a partner, especially in today's day and age, right? As women today, we don't really need a man to be happy. We are self-sufficient. We are at jobs that are even that are on par with men. So why do we need to keep this dream alive that finding a partner is a worth it endeavor, and it's worth investing our time and energy into?
Sure. And let me back up. When I said that critical piece, it was selecting the right partner.
Selecting the right partner.
Absolutely. Because, I actually do think some women, I don't think one needs to be coupled necessarily to be happy, certainly not to be financially, secure or anything like that. So I do think that it's true. So I won't actually say that everyone necessarily needs to find a partner. Clearly, the people who gravitate to us desire to find a partner. And I feel that the vast majority of people do have that need, desire to live in partnership with someone. Not that they need a man, and certainly not that they need a man to be happy. In fact, I think that's a very dangerous road to go, because if you need any person to make you happy, I think that is futile. And I actually don't think that's a great place to be searching for love or really anything else. So I think learning how to make ourselves happy is extremely important. I think it actually becomes more important, not less, when you're coupled with somebody, right? Who wants to be with someone who they feel it's their responsibility to make that person happy. So I think it's really, really important to step back for a second and say, wait a minute, am I looking for someone else to make me happy? Because if you find that to be the case, I'd say, let's step back from the partner search for a second. Let's figure out what makes you happy before we get there. That's a very important part of this. But in terms of, and the other thing, what's interesting is, so needing a man. So I don't think needing a man for financial security, needing a man to be happy, none of those are great reasons to be finding a partner. That said, I think when you're in partnership, I think that spiritual journey is something that I don't think you touch when you're living your life alone. Not that one is better or worse. I just think it's different. I actually feel similarly in terms of having kids. Again, I don't think everyone needs to have kids. I don't think it's important that everyone has kids. But those who desire to take that leap and have kids, that spiritual journey, again, it is a spiritual journey. And I think that creating a business is a spiritual journey in the same way, especially a business that involves services to other human beings. So all of those are spiritual journeys. So I think it is helpful to keep that, in mind. In terms of, why, so I think part of that is kind of a yearning to be on that journey with somebody else. I think that is a need that many people have, or just that really candidly to go down to something as basic as a lot of people kind of want to have that emergency contact, right? And you fill out those forms, and a lot of people, they're like, it's great to put, other loved ones in there, family members, but a lot of people are kind of like, wow, I really want to have a partner to put in that spot. And just the idea of having someone who has your back and you have their back, I think that is something that a lot of people have a desire and need for. And I actually don't think that's the same need as, needing to be happy. I mean, I think we all, have the responsibility to make yourselves happy. But I think having a really strong desire to have someone else in your life in that way, I don't think it's anything to feel like, any lesser for having that desire or that need.
I love that. I love that distinction, because it is that distinction between, okay, I need someone to fill my life, to feel whole, to be happy, and coming from a place of, actually, wouldn't it be amazing if I could co-create something with someone, if we could have a house together, if we could, continue our spiritual journeys together. So it's almost like that amazement and wonder of what's possible if you did go down that route, if you did follow that desire.
Yes.
To do that.
Very
I love
well
that.
said.
Yeah, because I feel like there is this misconception when people work with a love coach or a matchmaker or any other, service professional in this arena. It's like, oh, I'm desperate and that's why I need help. And it's actually, I think it's a very empowered choice. Like, all of my clients that I work with are amazing women. They don't need my support, but they make the choice out of from an empowered place of like, wouldn't it be amazing if I could fast track this process or get support in choosing the right partner? And I think that that's one thing I want to go into next is, what does it mean to select the right partner, and why is that important? And then
Sure.
The conversation of good enough, and where does that play in? Because you mentioned that too.
Well, I was more talking, when I said good enough, I wasn't really talking about a partner. What I was talking about was more that for a woman who says, I want to have like the family and the this and the that and that, I think it is actually important to look and say, where in my life are things good enough? I'll give you a personal example. For me personally, right? Housekeeping, okay? I'll say good enough when it's not close to good enough for other people in my life even, right? So that's something that I'm okay with, right? Because I know that if I've got a sink that has dishes and the kids came home, I want to engage them, the sink is never, ever, ever going to win out. And that's good enough for me. So, but someone who that drives crazy, it's not that's just my personal, someone else really that's something on their back. Like it's driving them bonkers that there are things in the sink, right? And so so for me, that's my good enough. Someone else's good enough could be something different. I don't necessarily mean good enough with respect to a partner, but I mean good enough with respect to look at your life. And I don't think everything can be like optimal all the time. That I don't think is possible. But the important thing I think is to really be deliberate in what needs to be optimal and what can be good enough. And that's where I think the mastery comes, figuring out for you. And it's not the same answer for every woman, every person at all. But it's really helpful to be in tune with your, where is it good enough and where does this have to be just optimal? Yeah, so that's what I mean by good enough.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting what you're saying there, and it's kind of a different topic, but I just want to bring it up, is it's almost like you're creating space for a relationship by and what you desire in your life by choosing what not to focus too highly on, you know?
Absolutely, because I don't think we can focus on everything at the same time, right? And I think that's really important. So this concept of balance being, well, in any given day, it's, I've got to, completely balance this or that. That's why I think sometimes we trip ourselves up. And that's where it's like, well, it's not possible. And I don't actually think that's possible, right? I think there's certain things I learned early on, very early on, that there's certain things I can multitask extremely well. And I think women, our brains are set up to be able to do that, generally speaking, way better than men's, okay? That's just, their brains are physiologically different, okay? So I feel like there are certain things I can really multitask extremely well without sacrificing anything. Other things, absolutely not. It would be complete loss on all sides if I was attempting to multitask, right? So identifying where one can sort of leverage more than one thing at a time and where someone is really laser focused to really get an optimal situation, I think is extremely important in terms of that. So that really plays into where is it good enough and, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I like that idea of, okay, let's prioritize one thing at a time, and I'm guessing that when someone starts working with you, they are prioritizing their love life,
Absolutely. They're making a commitment.
Right.
Well, I think, what we tell our clients, once you make the decision, that in and of itself is beginning the transformative process, right?
I totally agree with you. It's that leap of faith. It's like,
absolutely.
Oh my God, I'm going to do this and I'm committing. And the universe just starts aligning with you when you make that leap of faith. I've seen it so many times.
Absolutely. You are declaring that this is important, right? And that in and of itself is extremely powerful, right? And then also you are, you're telling yourself you're worth it, right? Like when you said about, I think you'd mentioned self-worth, you're telling yourself, I'm worth it. I'm worth the time, the energy, the money, whatever it might take, right? I'm worth it. That is powerful. So absolutely, extremely powerful.
Yeah. So powerful. I think anyone who would choose to work with anyone in moving from mediocrity to extraordinary, right? That is an empowerment choice. It's not I'm a needy and I'm not whole and so I need fixing, so this person's going to help me fix this. No, it is like I want to double down. I want a whole team of people, whether they're human or super, other forces that work with us to make our dreams come true.
And I want to do this in a way that is, I don't like timelines and speed, but I want to inject, right, some learnings of others, right? I don't need to reinvent the wheel. I don't need to basically reinvent the wheel, right? And I don't need to make all the mistakes myself. I can learn from others. So
absolutely,
that mindset, extremely, extremely helpful, right? High performers in every area of life, right? Do see the value in coaching in every aspect of life. And I think this is no different. Love is no different. I think that sometimes we've been kind of, and in the Western culture, right? We're going to talk about the West, the Cinderella fantasies and the Disney kind of fantasies of, well, like what's Sleeping Beauty? Like, well, we're going to wake up. Wow, we eat this poison apple. I don't remember the whole story, but we eat this poison apple. We're out and oh my gosh, wake up and who's there? Prince Charming, right? So even though that's like, we understand that's a fairy tale, I really think it kind of seeps in. And, there's so many people who come to me and they're like, well, yeah, I thought it would just happen. It didn't, right? But really, really, it just happens for anybody in that sense. Being deliberate and being proactive is how we succeed in every other area of life, why would this be any different, right? So that's what I like to point out to people in terms of that. I think making a choice is an empowered way to be. So anytime you're making a choice to work with a professional, what have you, by definition, that's empowered, right?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what does it mean to select the right partner? You know, we were touching on that earlier, and why is that important versus just selecting a partner? And why does expert help? Like, what is that role that someone like you can help provide in choosing that right partner?
Okay, so let's go to the why, because I mean, why is one of the most important questions that we can ask. So the why behind, I cannot think of another decision that's going to impact one's whole life, right? The well-being of their whole life, more so than the selection of a partner. I can't think of a higher stakes decision, to be candid with you. And I mean, and for me, it was extremely important to be part of something high impact. So that's a really big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I really don't think there is a more high impact decision that one can make for their life. So the why is, I don't think one needs a greater reason than that in terms of why is it important to select. No, I'm not saying the right partner is not the perfect partner, because I reject the concept of perfect when it comes to human beings, right? I actually don't even think it's very interesting. It's not only, it's not possible, but it's not even that interesting. Now, striving for an ideal, that's exciting. But perfection, right? So when I see, oh, the perfect guy, the perfect woman, I always say, wow, I've never met them. Tell me about that, because that's crazy. Now, the perfect for you, that's where we're going. So in that sense, I'm okay with the word perfect if we're talking about the perfect for you. But even that, right? We're constantly evolving. So the thought that we would find this perfect partner, and again, the fairy tale ending happily ever after, that I think also is setting yourself up for anything but success, right? And I like to set our clients up. I like to set myself up for success. So part of that is understanding that, yes, we can select someone that's going to be great with us, but we, one, need to also be great. And we also need to recognize we're not always going to be great. You know what? Neither is he. Okay. So it's not about like the perfect person. That's not what this is about. But finding someone who's a great fit for you, I think, you know, for me, one of the most important, you had mentioned the blend of East and West. So let's go back to that for a second. And let's say what I call my 3 C's. Okay. And we'll take 2 from sort of the traditional East and 1 from the traditional West. Okay. I use traditional kind of in quotes loosely, but the idea from the C that I like to take from the East is compass. Okay. And I term this as a sort of my design of the East. I'm not saying that one would go look at the tomes and find compass there. Compass, what does a compass do, Sarka? What do you use a compass for anyways?
To know what direction I'm headed.
To give you
Basically.
direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I say to give you direction. So I say every woman and man, because we work with men and women both, I say should have their compass being set at their own values, their own life vision, their own life goals. That's our compass. And notice that's going to be a different compass for everybody, right? It's not the same compass. But really the idea is the direction for your selection of partner is coming from your values, your life goals, which may not be, even
So
though
it's not based on some checklist.
not some checklist, and certainly not some checklist of somebody else that sort of makes their way in, because as we know, you know, other people's expectations, societal expectations, they all somehow make their way onto these lengthy checklists. We want to abandon that. We want it not to be this long checklist, and instead be our own values, core values, our own priorities. That's 1 C, so compass. Another C is, another C is in terms of commitment, okay? This I also take from the East, okay? And what I mean by this is commitment is a decision, right? It's a decision our clients make when they make a commitment to finding love and they decide to work with us, right? They make a commitment to invest in themselves and work with us, making a commitment. So the commitment we're looking for is understanding that when you have a commitment to a partner, it's not about, well, today, yeah, I feel great about, yeah, today, it doesn't waver with your feelings, right? Feelings are temporary. Commitment is more permanent in that sense. I say more permanent because there's certainly exceptions to everything, but more permanent in that sense. So a commitment.
It's like an orientation, or like
exactly. It's an orientation. I love that. Commitment being the orientation rather than feeling, rather than just I feel like being committed in this moment of time, right? So now where does the C from the West come in? And that comes in compatibility. So let me explain, because certainly compatibility is important in the East too, but sometimes in the East, people use proxies for compatibility. Could be anything, could be astrology, could be caste, could be the fact that we come from the same village, the same region of India, could be the fact that we even have the same religion for some people. But these markers, these proxies for compatibility, i.e., if we're both Indian, or if we're both a certain sect of being Indian, then clearly we're going to see the world in the same way, have the same vision, which I would say is not the case. It's actually importing reading in way too much into that, even if we're in the same religion or what have we, okay? So instead of that, I say really, there really is going to be no substitution for some time in interaction, okay? So this is why I think having that time in interaction is important. So that's why for us, there's an Eastern tradition of arranged marriages. That is not what we're about. And that's one big reason we're not about that. Because I think it is important to have that time interaction with somebody to really assess compatibility instead of using proxies for doing so.
I love that. That helps demystify the matchmaking process a little bit, because, from a consumer standpoint, it could just look like, okay, I give you my bio, Jasbina, find me 5 guys that match me, go,
Yeah.
And I think that just knowing that there is this kind of softer element, and this understanding of one's values. And can you give a more tangible example of that? Because I think when you haven't done your values work, I won't know what you're talking about. So I was curious if you could just give a live example for each of these. Like, give me a sample client, just even make one up, or someone you worked with that where you did kind of go through this. Because I'm very interested.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so let's combine the values with the proxies, right, that I'd mentioned before. So let's take as one of these proxies. I want a guy. I want a guy who is, let's say, is a doctor, right? To do a cliche for the Indian culture, let's say, I want a guy who's a doctor. Okay,
straight from a fantasy perspective.
Could be so many different things. Absolutely,
that used to be on my checklist. Yeah,
they used to be. Oh, great! So let's definitely use it. This is fun. Okay, so has to be a doctor. Okay, so now this is where the proxies come in. This is where one of my favorite questions, being why, comes in, right? So I like to ask the why behind that, okay? Because what I know is, for some people, it might be a fantasy, right? For other people, the why is this. In their head, okay, a doctor is going to tell them that this guy has a work ethic. Okay, it's going to say that he's got a work ethic, or it's going to say that he's intelligent. Okay, and intelligence is a value. That's what's supremely important to her. Okay, intelligence or work ethic, or it could tell her that what else? That he's a caring person. Okay, let's just use those 3 to keep it simple. 1, work ethic. 2, what did I say? Intelligence. 3, caring. Okay, now here's the thing about it, right? If we take that apart, then we say, okay, what's super important to you is to have someone caring. And then we want to pick that apart, right? Because what's caring to you might be different than what's caring to another person. I always like to go beyond the word caring and say, what would someone who's caring to you, how would they show that to you? How would they demonstrate that to you? How would that be like to be with someone, right? So caring. Okay, so caring. So is it that, one, all doctors are caring? And I don't think that is the case, right? I have a lot of people in the medical field in my family. I have respect for it, but I certainly can, and I'm sure every one of us can come up with some counters to a caring doctor, right? So it's not a proxy. It's not that every doctor is caring. It's not that if you're with a doctor, you're going to automatically, be with a caring person. It doesn't work that way. Intelligence. Yeah, I think there is a certain level of intelligence one needs to do, but you know what? Not necessarily the most intelligent or intellectual guy, because intellectual and intelligent aren't even the same thing either, right? Sometimes people mean, I want to have these very intellectual dialogues. You can have a highly intelligent person that has no desire to engage in an intellectual dialogue and maybe is not even all that intellectual, to be candid, right? So two different things to begin with, right? So we got to parse it out. And then what of that is so important to you, right? And what's the third one? Hardworking. As we know, there's so many people who are doing so many things that require a work ethic, certainly not limited to doctors. And candidly, there's some doctors who are less hardworking than others and others in different fields. So again, this becomes about isolating what is super important to you, right? Which I say coming from your values, right? For some reason, someone really values intelligence, really values someone who's caring, really values hard work. Not everyone actually does, right? But if it's something important to you, you might need that in a partner to respect that person. It's important to have that then, or at least to be somewhat aligned. You don't need to be on the same, everything is a spectrum. I like to think there's very little black and white, right? There's where my law comes in. You learn very early on in law school that facts, right, are somewhat few and far between. There are not a lot of just straight black and white facts. A lot of perspective, a lot of the lenses we see things in, right? Very, very important. So again,
and also it's almost like our mind creates evidence of why this proxy is important, but a little bit of this is about deconstructing the evidence that we've collected in order to create a new possibility.
absolutely. I mean, the research is out there. It is pretty clear that, our beliefs are very much driving they're basically creating our reality, right? So what we believe, our subconscious's job is to find evidence. That's its job, right? If our subconscious is doing its job, it's finding us evidence of our beliefs. So I tell our clients, that is why the belief that, there are no great guys out there, right? That is really, really helping our client find all those not so great guys. They are a magnet. All guys cheat, right? Let's say a client had an experience of a guy cheating, okay? Devastating, right? But the problem is that continues to be a problem for that person, right? If that's their belief that lots of men cheat, or all men, or most men cheat, okay? Because I will tell you, that will be the person who will find, and some men do cheat, for sure, some women do, and that person will find all the men. Somehow they will come across all the men who are cheating, and the guy who probably wasn't really going to cheat, they might kind of create an interesting scenario where actually that might be more likely to happen, unfortunately, right? So it's a very interesting thing with our beliefs in that way. I totally agree, which is why I think it's super important to be aware of what your beliefs are and ask yourself the question, is this serving me or not so much? And if it's not, why do I need to hold on to these, right?
Totally. And just having someone help deconstruct that, like going back to the compass. Why? Like, where did you collect these beliefs from? And is there a way to reconstruct a new set of beliefs or a new set of values that actually align with you, not using proxies, but something more on a core, on a more soul level?
Absolutely.
And then what was the second C? It was
so we had the compass,
right?
We had commitment.
That's right.
I think it is important, right? Because it can be, I mean, the clients we work with are typically in the category of, they have a lot of options. They're not in the category of can't get a date, to be candid with you. So the clients who come to us are not, I can't get a date, help me. They're more like, help me navigate this, right? Help me, I know I've got a lot to offer and I can get married, snap of a finger if I was just, that's not what this is about for them. Okay. They're looking, so commitment to, to somebody, having a commitment to somebody, and recognizing that there are going to be ups and downs in the whole thing, and to not get tied to, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. And so clearly, maybe this commitment wasn't a good idea, right? In terms of that. So that is something important. Just commitment being a decision rather than a feeling, right? A decision that you make, I think you don't jump into, but you make very deliberately. But once you make it, it's like you remind yourself, right, of why you chose this person, why you're with this person. And the other thing that commitment does, which is very interesting, it's a very self-serving cycle in a way, is it really gets you to focus on all the reasons you chose to be with this person, right? Because if you are really committed to someone, then the most masochistic thing you can do is look at that person doing something that you're like, why is he doing that? And instead of giving him the benefit of the doubt or finding out why or getting in his shoes, you're automatically going to, what a jerk, right? That's not helpful. And if you're giving the benefit of the doubt, you're looking at you're finding the positives. You're reminding yourself of what you really like about that person. You're coming from more of a place of curiosity. Why did he do that? Why, as opposed to immediately jumping to, well, clearly he's just being a jerk, right? It's a different perspective that is really important in terms of the way you're interacting. Mm-hmm. So, and commitment leads to that.
Commitment leads to that, and and even before you meet your partner, you can still be committed to this path of finding a partner.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think part of finding love is believing it's possible, and that's another way that people who seek our services, your services, my services, everyone in the love business service, part of that is they're kind of drawing a line in the sand, and they're saying, I've not lost hope. This is possible, right? Because it'd be crazy to decide to work with someone if you didn't think if it was impossible. What's the point, right? And so if someone has lost that hope completely, yeah, they're not the ones who are working with us. And that's a problem, because losing that hope completely, right? That is where there's point of no return. I tell everyone, there's love out there for you as long as you continue to believe it. Once you quit, yeah, you're right. It's not going to happen for you, because it won't happen for someone who's quit. It's true, right? But no one has to quit. That's the point.
Yeah.
So no one has to,
Hey, Jasbina, I'm wondering if we can try maybe not using your headphones, because I'm hearing some scratching noises. Let's see. Yeah, can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you. Hello, hello. Okay, put it back in. I can't hear you. Let's see. Hello? Oh, wait, now I can hear you.
I just put the headphone in. I wonder if.
No, now I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, now I can't. Oops, now I can't.
But this is an example of good enough.
Yeah.
I determined very early on that technology is something I'm just not naturally very excited about.
Yeah.
So I really don't take a big, clearly all I know is speakers on fully. So that should be good enough. The volume is up highest.
Totally.
It's the limit of my knowledge on that.
No, now your voice is much clearer.
Okay.
It's
okay.
Great. And I'll edit this part out, so don't worry about that.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good. Everything is really good.
Beautiful. And then the third C is around, what was the third C again?
Compatibility.
Compatibility.
And compatibility, not say using the lazy way out of trying to use proxies. I don't think it's actually lazy. I think for some people it's laziness. I think for other people it's a fear of getting hurt, to be candid with you, right?
Totally.
So it's using proxies as a, wow, this is going to be my magic bullet. I can't get hurt if we've got this proxy means this. But as we know, right? And, could be anything, could be, now here's an example with the values, right? So for somebody, I'll just use the Hindu religion, okay? I personally am not Hindu. We're going to use Hindu religion. So for somebody, having someone who shares a Hindu religion might be extremely important to them, okay? That's value-based, that's one thing. I still want to know, what is that about? Because as we know, one can practice that religion in so many different ways or not practice. So the fact that someone was born in a Hindu family, to me, means something, but not as much as one might think. To someone like me, it doesn't mean all that much. I like to find out, well, what does that mean for you? How does that play out for you? It's helpful to know what plays out for your family to some degree, but I really want to know how it plays out for you, right? It's great to know that your mom does pujas, this, that. For you, what is it like, right? And that person could be anywhere along a continuum. So we might discover that this Hindu thing is actually extremely important, that they share that with their partner. We might also figure out that it's actually not so super important. And if that's the case, then I always say, let's isolate the absolute essentials, values driven, life goals driven, ideally, and let's be as flexible as possible as everything outside of that. Why? Well, that's math, right? When we're multiplying a 1% by a 1% by a 1%, that number is just a really, really small number, right? So the chances of getting our essentials becomes a really small number too. So it's a very self-serving thing to do, to not to be as flexible about everything else. So that's why I'm always asking the whys behind everything that's essential, to really figure out, is this an essential? Is there something underneath that that really is driving this? That's what we're actually after, more so than this proxy. So
Truly, truly.
Yeah.
So Jasbina, I'm curious, when you get a new client,
Okay.
what do you feel makes them relationship ready? How do you know someone's like actually ready to really meet their partner, or is somewhere in the journey of still self-discovery? And does working with you help in that discovery? And I think finding love is a self-discovery path, right? It's a spiritual path. Like the whole
I completely
path to
agree.
finding a partner can feel like an ecstatic spiritual path in which you are facing your inner demons and your inner patterns and all of that.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. But you know what? I also think maintaining that love is
Oh, yeah. I don't think people realize that.
But it also is, we're evolving, right? So I think the self-discovery continues. And not only that, but I think, and this is where the growth, the spiritual journey I was mentioning before comes in, I think there's a level that we can get at in terms of awareness that we can get to on our own. But I think when we're in partnership with someone else, it can take a whole different dimension, right? So the self-growth, we think people gravitate towards our services, likely yours as well. Definitely our services tend to be pretty high up there in terms of self-awareness, introspection, self-growth. But it's a journey that we're always on. I personally feel like I'm on it, and I expect to be on the rest of my life. And so I think that is the case for everybody in that sense. We might be at different stages of it. We might be, but we ourselves are. So to speak, nobody becomes a client of ours before we do a very thorough assessment to begin with. So only after we do an assessment do we even offer to work with anyone. So we have a self-selected process, as well as we are pretty selective in who we take on. Like I mentioned before, I like to set myself up for success. It's a good, I like that modus operandi. So part of it is doing this assessment and helping people work through that. But after doing that assessment, I do get a good sense of, okay, one, is this person, right? Or do they have a level of self-awareness, and also a level of, I don't know everything and I'm willing to learn, right? In terms of being on that path. I think that's actually extremely important. And also an understanding of, is this internally motivated? Because as we know, when we are, when we're single, there are other people in our life who sometimes are maybe more invested in us getting partnered up than we are. And that's not someone right, I think, for our process if they themselves are not really committed and really self-motivated to this kind of process, okay? So if someone gets to the point of being a client, is my point, they've already been vetted to a great degree in terms of those things, right? So that's an important starting point. That's an important part to realize.
Because it takes a certain amount of vulnerability, right? And I think that's part of the self-awareness process too, is like you reach a point where you're like, oh my God, I can't do this on my own, whatever it is,
Absolutely. And
Vulnerable.
absolutely. And we all have blind spots, right? I mean, we all have blind spots, which by definition, we're not going to be aware of because they're blind, right? Or the level at which they are blind, right? So, I mean, we do a whole feedback process with people our clients meet, part of which is geared towards helping us identify those blind spots because they certainly aren't things that our client can articulate to us, right? Because they're blind to them. What can is getting it straight from the horse's mouth in terms of the people they're meeting as to things that, they may be saying, doing, leaking out that, it's so interesting to me. We all, we all have a sense of, oh, I've got kind of this handled, right? What's interesting to people sometimes when they get feedback is they kind of walked into a situation where they're kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to let on X, Y, or Z, right? But that becomes somewhat transparent. We actually leak out things that we're not aware that we're doing, right? We kind of intellectually think we've got something handled, but we're leaking things out so that sometimes I'll be doing feedback and someone can't put their finger on it, but they're like, couldn't connect with X, Y, and Z. And sometimes it's that something was leaking out, right? That the person thought they sort of had handled. So in terms of blind spots, I think working with you, working with me, working with our colleagues, right, can be very helpful in terms of seeing where those blind spots are, where we can up level in terms of that, right? Because those blind spots at the dating stage are going to continue to be blind spots in the relationship stage, right? That will be there. So it's important to have a level of awareness, and a lot of times we can use help and support in gaining that.
And it's also like using the dating process, even if it's kind of through services, right? To continue to grow your understanding of what you want in a relationship. So it's almost like you're giving yourself permission to discover more. Like, okay, I said I wanted a guy who has a strong work ethic. Actually, I kind of want a guy who has a lot of free time that he can spend with me. And it's true. I love men who have balance in their life. Like that to me is a number one priority. I mean, I do value hard work, but but I also have a certain lifestyle that I dream about. And I wouldn't have discovered that if I hadn't met, several men and really done the analysis. Like, how much does this person resonate with me, and why or why not? Because I did start off with this, right?
Yes. And I think that's one reason why a lot of people can be like, he was great on paper. Oh my God, he was absolutely fantastic on paper. I'm sure you met when you were single a lot of guys that maybe were great on paper, right? But you didn't connect. I'd argue one reason is maybe you didn't know it yet, but connection for you was having a guy with a certain level of balance that was compatible with your world vision, right? So some of this stuff can only be unearthed through interaction. I agree with that. Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about, what are the trends right now in terms of dating, matchmaking? Are people now, I heard about something like online fatigue, like people are getting fatigued of online dating. Where do you think the opportunities are for people today, single people today in general?
I strongly believe opportunity is everywhere for singles. So that's the good news. It really, really, really is. Okay. So clearly I'm a fan of what I do with the matchmaking. But we also do online dating support strategies. So I'm not a matchmaker who's like, there's quality people, matchmaking. There's other people online. Absolutely not. We have online dating strategy. So the thing about it is, like anything else, right? There's a skill set involved, okay? And we can do things well and we can do things not so well, and our results will reflect that, okay? So, beyond the online dating and the matchmaking and that kind of a thing, I think it's really important to keep in mind it's not exactly where you are necessarily, but who you're being. That's extremely important, okay? You can be if you're in Chicago, you can be in the L, you can be in the subway. If you're in, other cities, right? New York, anywhere, you can be sort of almost anywhere, and you can be a person. I mean, I have personally, when I was single, I actually personally experienced this. And I wasn't even looking for a relationship at this point. This was a really long time. And I remember I was just probably I was on a train commuting to work, and I was just kind of, I tend to go in my own world. That's one of my things. So I was probably just in my own world, sitting on the train, and just maybe I was thinking about something that maybe made me smile or laugh or whatever. And I literally like got this guy just like gave me his number and like just gave me this piece of paper, and I'm like, what's this, right? So I get to work, I don't do anything, I get to work, I'm like, what is this? I find it in my bag. It was like, something really struck you about, right? He was just like that I was happy. That was it, right? So something just really struck you, and here's my number, and I know this is strange, I've never done this before, but give me if you would, I'd love to hear from you if you want to give me, I didn't want to, like approach you on a train or whatever. So the point not being about anything other than it was a train, my goodness, anywhere. If you can meet someone, you can meet someone anywhere. So it's about who you're being, okay? And being a happy person, circling back to what we're talking about, is a great way to magnetize great love. So it's, one, it's about who you're being. Okay, the other thing, let's go back to day-to-day life, right? Because yes, we can do the online dating, we can hire a matchmaker, hire like a, recruiter for your love life, that's what it is. But we can also really leverage our day-to-day life, okay? But how do we do that? Okay, this is where who you're being is extremely important too. Because if we're in line at Starbucks, like staring at our smartphone, doing emails, texting, guys are really hard to approach, probably won't. 90% of guys won't approach, okay? The 10% who will, you may or may not want them, to be candid, right? They might be the guys who approach anybody, okay? So you don't, you do want some of those 90% probably who are not going to approach you if your head's buried in the cell phone. So put it away. You know what I'm saying? Engage instead, all right? You're single, you're in line at Starbucks. I have a colleague who actually, speaking of Starbucks and Pete's Coffee, insert whatever you want. I'm certainly not, in saying it's got to be Starbucks, but any coffee place. I have a colleague who literally, she's a dating coach, and she literally will go into a client's, place, kitchen, and trash the coffee machine. Okay, why? Point is, you're not going to meet anyone in your kitchen. So if you're single, you got to be lining up somewhere and getting coffee. Don't have it in your kitchen, right? That was the thought behind it. Yes. So kind of a symbolic trash this. We're doing things differently. Okay. In a similar vein, right? If you're going to go to the dry cleaner anyway, if you're going to do grocery, which you probably are, right? You're going to eat. If you're going to do those kind of things, might as well do them, kind of mix it up a little bit. Instead of go to the same dry cleaner over and over, maybe mix it up a bit, right? Go to someone around the corner, somewhere else, right? Go to a different grocery store, hit Whole Foods, hit Kroger, hit wherever, right? Once in a while. So you can kind of mix it up and just, have touch points with different people from time to time. So,
totally. And don't be afraid to make small talk, right?
Don't be afraid to do what?
To make small talk with strangers.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be afraid to engage people. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't be afraid to engage people at all. And yeah, absolutely. With a smile on your face. And it's not even about what you say. I know guys, right? Because we work with women and men. So sometimes guys feel like it's got to be this perfect thing they got to say when they're going to approach you. Approaching women, right? It's huge. As women, we don't realize, I know I did not when I was single. I did not realize what a big deal a guy approaching a woman was. That is a really long walk across a floor in a lounge or at a party. It's a long walk for a guy to make. And that's a whole different thing in terms of how a woman can make that walk easier. But in terms of given that, right, how hard it can be approached, some guys kind of think, oh, I gotta have the perfect thing to say. But it's really not about that, right? It's not about saying a perfect thing. It's about, being real, just engaging and just having a positive energy about oneself. That's why who you're being is way more important than exactly where you are at any given time.
I love that. And I remember there was something on your website that I saw around self-love. Can you touch on that really quickly?
We have a lot on our website, so I'm not sure what. I think that self-love is a starting point, right, for finding great love. Okay, we self-love, and also, but that said, I think sometimes we put some pressure on that, in that we're all evolving, and there's a continuum. Okay, so it's not. I think it is for a guy to value a woman. It's extremely important for a woman to have some level of value for herself. So that level of self-love I think is extremely important. But it's not that, I mean, we are all imperfect beings. So for someone to think self-love means I need to, just, be 100% this and 100% that, right? No, that's not what I mean by self-love. But I mean, you really have to have, you have to think you're worthy. You have to see yourself as a high value woman, I think, to attract a guy who recognizes you as a high value woman. And that's the kind of guy you want to attract, right?
It's almost like I sometimes ask my clients, would you date yourself? Do you love hanging out with yourself? Are you turned on by yourself?
Yes, that's super important. And if you're not, that doesn't mean you're just fundamentally flawed. It just means that, hey, we got some polishing up to do. We're all imperfect. So that just tells us where, right? Just like if we're envying someone, it's kind of like, it's not about the other person. What is it that we're envying? What might be missing in our life? What do we want to do differently, right? If we're envying, some people are envying someone who just is so fired up about their work. Are you not fired up anymore? Do you need to make some changes on your, right? So in a similar way, it's, yeah, you absolutely, we're all works in progress. And sometimes that kind of feedback just tells us where we need to tweak, right? Before we're really, so that's all it is.
So true. So Jasbina, I want to hear a little bit about your love story. How did you meet your husband? And now you have 2 beautiful kids. It's so awesome. Yeah.
And I will also tell you, my 2 beautiful kids are walking in. I kind of had a,
okay.
So I have literally about 4 minutes left.
Okay, so why don't you do this?
Okay.
Why don't you just explain, or just 1 minute, tell us about your husband, how you met him and your family, and then I want to hear about what you're offering to our community.
Okay. Well, I consider myself someone who is a don't date, don't date, don't date. Okay, get married, which to people who share our culture will understand, a lot of it resonates with a lot of people in our culture. And then people of all different cultures, actually, not just ours, weren't encouraged to date early on. So, when my friends in junior high were dating, I really wasn't, okay? I only started dating much later on. And instead I was focusing on sports and other activities and my family, my friends, my studies, my career, everything else, right? So then when it came to be, I was in my 20s, I was in my late 20s and dated a little bit here, right? Like people I met, like, not that I didn't date the train guy, but I mean, people who I met in just like life that just happened to me, right? I would, kind of, so that was, that to my 20s. But then when I got to a point where, okay, now I feel the need. It's not external anymore. I feel the need, right? I'm ready for that great love in my life. I'm ready to find that right person. Then I looked around and I said, well, I don't have any prospects, right? Because I haven't really focused on this at all. So then it was about me going on my dating adventures and meeting guys in all different ways, right? Setups and online and everything, and just navigating my way, just like I'm helping our clients too, right? So I was in the trenches, just like our clients are. I decided, gonna do this, arranged marriage. Arranged marriage was not something that I was excited about. And, so it's okay, gonna do this. So that's how I felt my mind, just all different things. And, went through different learning experiences with people. And, that's how I learned kind of what works for me and him. Let me jump to the kids real quick, because I know we only have 2. I think the kids is actually an important piece in that I have that perspective as a mother that I didn't have when I wasn't a mother. And I think it is just like I have a perspective as a married woman that I didn't have before I was a married woman, or I have a perspective, and I think, like I said, you connect the dots later on. I was doing this before I would, I kind of started what I was doing with the end of, I knew I wanted to have kids, but when I started, I didn't have the kids that second. I just knew it was ahead for me. But just having that perspective in terms of what does it mean to like co-create a family with somebody else, right? And even that idea of co-creation, it's not the same for everyone in terms of what their vision of that is, in terms of, division of labor and all of that. That's a whole different topic that really feeds into this work-life balance. But again, this is where we say choose well in terms of really figuring out how you want to do things and finding someone that fits with, right? There's not a right or wrong. There's not a one way. Our clients are all over the map in terms of what they want for their lives. We have clients who kind of, they've not been married, they're looking for that, you know, they're in their 20s or in their 30s or in their 40s, and they're looking for that like love and creating a family together. We have clients who've kind of been there, done that. They have their family. They're at a different stage. They're not looking for that anymore, and everything, right? So it's about really identifying, but I feel like I have a perspective as mother in terms of what does that mean? So that when somebody has, you mentioned fantasy, when someone has sort of fantasies of what certain things are, I have a perspective that is very helpful, I think, in guiding our clients as they navigate their way through that.
Totally, you've got the mom superpower now.
Well,
there's a new kind of intelligence that kind of opens up too.
I think so. I think there's a new intelligence, there's also brain fog too. So I think both, right? It's interesting. But there is, you know what it is, Sarka? This is what it is. There is nothing more effective with kids than role modeling, okay? It's like what they say, you can say whatever you want, but what you do is what they're watching. But if you think about that, that's huge, right? I mean, role modeling is to be the person, right? You know, that is a responsibility that can really fire you up. It can get in your way if you let it too. I mean, this is so multidimensional. So we've got to do another talk where we talk about this, because
I need to.
The one thing I will say is yes, it is a spiritual process. It is a growth process, like I think possibly no other, but I will say all of it is like being in partnership, having kids, all of it, creating a business, all of these are spiritual journeys, and they're all different. And there are some interesting parallels, which is actually quite fascinating. Whole different topic. Let me jump to the ebook that we're going to go back to. Connection. And connection actually is the biggest C for a first date, in my opinion. A great first date is someone you connected with, right? I think if we're going to say go to a first date with something in mind, it's connection. Okay, so we have an ebook that we're offering your listeners. I'm very excited about it. Where we have 6 tips how to connect with a man on a first date. And if we have any men who have very intelligent, smart men, in my opinion, who have found their way here to get into kind of how women think, then we have one for men as well. But that will be on our website. But the one I'm not sure how this is going to work. Is it opting? Do we send you an opt-in? Like, I'm actually
you can just send me the opt-in link, or
we'll send you the opt-in link for women how to connect with a man on a first date. Or I'll figure out with tech. Maybe you can send you both. But the bottom line is this is called from okay, I buffer myself with 5 minutes, admittedly, but 4:20 is my drop dead. So because I have to buffer myself, clearly. So with the ebook, right? So 6 tips. Where do we get these tips from? This is really important. This is not, ivory tower. This is not, pie in the sky. This is actual feedback from men and women, 20s to 60s plus, different ethnicities, not only in, there's not a cultural bias here. It's different ethnicities, different mindsets. And really what we called from lots of feedback, countless feedback sessions, okay? In terms of really how to connect with someone on a first date, things to be aware of. We send these to our clients before their introductions, okay? So we are gifting your listeners with this, and I really say use this and use it on your next interaction.
Love
on your
it.
Next first date.
Thank you. And I can just imagine how it's helpful in every part of one's life. So it's not, I think what you learn through someone like us is applicable. It's like everything, all your relationships become better, right? If you know how to connect.
Absolutely. You up level, connecting you up level. Doesn't matter, work, any relationship, relatives, everything. But I will say these tips are more geared to the romantic, but there's no question connecting in life. If that's a superpower, right? If there's a superpower, connection, I think, is it. So absolutely.
And this is what the journey is. When someone does commit to love, I think it's about growing that connection superpower.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Jasbina.
My pleasure.
You look so beautiful. I have to tell you, you look like a fairy. And it was so much fun interviewing you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. I will talk to you later. Okay,
Sounds good.
come out of here. Okay,
Take
bye-bye.
care. Bye.